Good morning. It is Saturday morning here in New Jersey and another hot day. It's going to be 90 degrees. It is August of 2025 and I am reading to you from the Gospel according to John. This is part 3. I think we left off with chapter 8, so we're going to start with chapter 9. I will read 8, 58, and 59 because that was quite a statement that Jesus said last time. So let's read. Uh, John chapter 8, verse 58. Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was born, I am." Therefore they picked up their stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. And I said you could find that when God told Moses, "I am." Tell them I am sent you. And that's taken from Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. So Jesus is stating his deity right here, and the scribes and the priests and the Pharisees and these devout men who followed the law of Moses and everything, they couldn't comprehend that this man in front of them was God, was the Messiah. So that's why they went to go pick up their stones to stone them. Chapter 9, my heading, I'm reading New American Standard Version of the Bible. You can read any version you want, and what I like to do sometimes when I'm reading is have a handy dandy little notebook and some paper in case there's a word or there's a place I want to look up, and I just write it down, and it helps me with my Bible study. It helps me with reading, and I can really comprehend and understand what I'm looking at even more when I go back and reread. So, chapter 9, my heading reads, Healing the Man Born Blind. As he passed, this is Jesus, as he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? And Jesus answered, it was neither that this man sinned, nor his parents, but it was so the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Night is coming when no man can work. Yeah, that's pretty, because sometimes we say, well, why was that man born blind, or why was this man born without an arm, or somebody was born a certain way, and we think it's, well, somebody sinned. So somebody might say, oh, because this person sinned, or they became that way because this person sinned, or their parents sinned. And Jesus simply states, no, for this particular person, it was neither, because we're going to read on and find out what Jesus does for him. Verse 5, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle and applied the clay to his eyes and said to him, he said to the blind man, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent, S-E-N-T, sent. So he went away and washed and came back seeing. Therefore the neighbors and those who previously saw him as a beggar were saying, is not this the one who used to sit and beg? Others were saying, this is he. Still others were saying, no, but he is like him. He kept saying, I am the one. So they were saying to him, how then were your eyes opened? And he answered, the man who was called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went away and washed, and I received sight. And they said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. So that's his little testimony there. He's telling the people what Jesus had done. Verse 13, they brought to the Pharisees the man who was formerly blind. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. So it was the Sabbath day when this all happened. Then the Pharisees also were asking him again how he received his sight. And he said to them, "He applied clay to my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Therefore, some of the Pharisees were saying, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others were saying, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And there was division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you say about him since he opened your eyes?" And he said, "He is a prophet." And the Jews then did not believe it of him, that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called his parents of the very one who had received his sight, and questioned them, saying, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? Then how does he now see?" And his parents answered them and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." So this wasn't a child, this was a grown man. Ask him. He's a grown man, he'll tell you. It's his testimony, not ours. Verse 22. His parents said this because they were afraid. They were afraid of the Jews. They were afraid of the people around them. They were afraid of the Pharisees. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." Verse 24. So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." And then he answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." Yeah, it's a preaching moment. Preach it. So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" And he answered them, "I told you already, and you do not listen." You don't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You do not want to become his disciple too, do you? And they reviled him and said, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he is from." Verse 30. The man answered and said to them, "Well, here is an amazing thing that you do not know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes." Wow. Literally and spiritually, he opened his eyes. But to these other men, he's like, well, let me read that again, verse 30, because that's pretty awesome. The man answered and said to them, and he's saying to the scribes and the priests, "Well, here is an amazing thing, that you do not know where he is from, where Jesus is from, but yet he opens my eyes." It's just great. Verse 31. We know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he hears him. Since the beginning of time, it has never been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. And they answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and you are teaching us." So they put him out. So they canceled the guy, so to speak. They canceled him. Get out, get out, get out of the synagogue. Get out. You're canceled. Verse 35, my heading reads, Jesus affirms his deity. Jesus heard that they had put him out, and finding him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And he answered, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and he is the one who is talking with you." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. Wow. And Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, so that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." So those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, "We are not blind too. Are we? And Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But since you say we see, your sin remains. He's telling them, stop being so self-righteous. You say you see, but you don't see. But you say you're not seeing it. And you say you see, you understand. Now your sin remains because you're seeing, you're witnessing my miracles. You're witnessing everything that's going on, but you're not, it's not here and it's not here. Or maybe if it is, they don't want to accept it. So we're up to chapter 10. My heading reads Parable of the Good Shepherd. And now this is Jesus speaking. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up from another way, he is a thief and a robber. There's only one way into where the fold is. But he who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him because they don't know the voice of the strangers. This figure of speech Jesus spoke to them, but they didn't understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. So Jesus said to them again, truly, truly, I say to you, the door of the sheep. I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture, find rest, find comfort, find peace. Verse 10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. Verse 11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, sees a wolf coming, and he leaves the sheep. He flees, he runs away. It's like, oh no, this ain't for me. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand. He's doing it for money. He's hired. He doesn't have a heart in it, so to speak. So verse 13, he flees because he's a hired hand and he's not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Do you know him? Now's a good time to start. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep, which are not of this fold, and I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice, and they will become one flock with the shepherd. This is an awesome statement because he's talking about other people that aren't in his fold, that aren't of Jewish background and descent. He's talking about other people that need to come into the fold. And so that the fold, that the flock can be one flock. So he's talking about Gentiles here also, that they have to come to, that they're allowed to come to. Once the death and resurrection happens, all are welcome. So he wants to make one flock. Verse 17, for this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it again. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. So anybody that goes around and says that the Jews killed Jesus or the Romans killed Jesus or whatever, no. Jesus said, I lay it down on my own initiative. I choose to lay it down. He's God. He doesn't have to be put to death unless he willingly puts it. It says it has to be. Remember, Jesus is God. He could at any time call thousands and thousands and thousands of angels to come down and wipe everybody out. And that would have been it. But he didn't do that. He says, I willingly lay down my life. No man takes it. I'll read that again, verse 18. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This commandment I received from my Father. A division occurred again among the Jews because of these words, and many of them were saying, he has a demon, he's insane. Why do you listen to him? And others were saying, these are not the sayings of one who is demon-possessed. A demon cannot open the eyes of a blind man, can he? Verse 22, my heading reads, Jesus asserts his deity. At that time, the Feast of Dedication took place in Jerusalem. The Feast of Dedication, we know it, who are Gentile, as Hanukkah. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. And the Jews then gathered around him and were saying to him, wow, how long, this is good, how long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly. And Jesus said to them, I told you, and you don't believe. You do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify of me. But you do not believe because you are not of my sheep. There's a mic drop moment. Verse 27, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give eternal life to them, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. So he just said, no one will be able to snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. It's beautiful. I and my Father are one. And the Jews went to pick up stones to stone him, and Jesus said, I showed you many good works from the Father. For which of them are you stoning me for? Which of them are you stoning me? Verse 33, the Jews answered, for a good work we do not stone you, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, make yourself out to be God. See, they understood what he meant. Verse 34, Jesus answered, he said, has it not been written in your law, I said you are gods? If he called them gods, to whom the word of God came, and the scripture cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father sanctified and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said I am the Son of God? If I do not do the works of my Father, don't believe me. But if I do them, though you not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Therefore, they were seeking again to seize him, and he eluded their grasp. Verse 40. And he went away again beyond the Jordan to a place where John was first baptizing, and he was staying there. Many came to him and were saying, while John performed no sign, yet everything John said about this man was true. And then many believed in him there. Now we're up to chapter 11. The death and the resurrection of Lazarus. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was, and this is, he explains who Martha is, and you'll find out who Martha is later on in I believe, the next chapter. It was the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, the sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of Man may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." And the disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you are going there again?" And Jesus said, "Are they not 12 hours in a day?" Meaning 12 light hours. "If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the light, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." This he said, and after that he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go, that I may awaken him out of sleep." And the disciples then said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Not understanding, I guess, that he was dead. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he was speaking of literal sleep. So Jesus then said to them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Therefore Thomas, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us go, so that they may die with him." So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. So Lazarus was dead 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. And Martha, therefore, when she had heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give to you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" And she said to him, "Yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world." And when she had said this, she went away and called Mary her sister, saying secretly, "The teacher is here, and he is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got out quickly and was coming to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, they went and saw that Mary got up quickly and went out and followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled, and said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Lord, come and see." Verse 35, Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" So Jesus, again, being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. And Jesus said, "Remove the stone." And Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, "Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days." And Jesus said to her, "Did I not say that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they removed the stone, and then Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you, and that you have heard me. I know that you always hear me because of the people standing around. I said it so that they may believe that you have sent me." When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." And the man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around a cloth. And Jesus said to him, "Unbind him and let him go." Therefore many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. Verse 47, conspiracy to kill Jesus. Therefore the chief priests and the Pharisees convened a council and were saying, "What are we doing? For this man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, all men will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish." Wow. I put a wow face over here because that was quite a prophecy, quite a statement. Yeah, one man had to die so that the whole world could be saved and not perish. They were worried that they were going to lose their place, that the Romans would come and take away their everything they had worked for. So there was a lot of envy, a lot of pride, a lot of greed going on behind the scenes over there with the Pharisees and the high priests and the scribes and the religious, the righteous, self-righteous people. So when he said this, that one man died for the people and that the whole nation should perish, they were ready to, they want to get rid of Jesus. Verse 51. Now he did not say this on his own initiative, but being the high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. And then I think when we went back to chapter 10 in John 10:16, we also read here when Jesus said, "I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them," right? So again, he's talking about bringing others together to be one under God through Christ. Verse 53, so that day on, they planned together to kill him. Therefore, Jesus no longer continued to walk publicly among the Jews, but went away from there to the country near the wilderness, into the city called Ephraim, and there he stayed with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went up to Jerusalem out of the country before the Passover to purify themselves. So they were seeking for Jesus and were saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think, that he will not come to the feast at all?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was to report it, so that they might seize him. Chapter 12, verse 1. My heading here reads, Mary anoints Jesus' feet. Mary anoints Jesus. Sorry, it says Mary anoints Jesus. Got ahead of myself there. Okay, verse 1. Jesus, therefore, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there, and Martha was serving, but Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table with him. And Mary then took a pound of very costly perfume, of pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. But Judas Iscariot, verse 4, one of the disciples, who was intending to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor people?" Now he said this not because he was concerned about the poor, but because he was a thief, and as he had the money box, he used to pilfer, which means, sneak and take some, what was put into it, steal some. Verse 7, therefore Jesus said, "Let her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The large crowd of the Jews then learned that he was there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might also see Lazarus, whom he raised from the dead. But the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death also, because on account of him many of the Jews were going away and were believing in Jesus. Isn't that cynical? Isn't that an evil plot? Let's get rid of the one who Jesus raised too. We'll get rid of him. So there's no proof. Verse 12, my heading reads, Jesus enters Jerusalem. On the next day, the large crowd who had come to the feast, when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, took the branches of the palm trees and went out to meet him and began to shout, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel. And Jesus, finding a young donkey, sat on it, as it is written, Fear not, daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. These things his disciples did not understand at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things were written of him, and that they had done these things to him. Verse 17, so the people who were with him, when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead, continued to testify about him. For this reason also the people went to meet him, because they heard that he had performed this sign. So the Pharisees said to one another, You see that you are not doing any good. Look, the world has gone after him. Verse 20, it says, Greeks seek Jesus. Now there were some Greeks among those who were going up to worship at the feast. And these then came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and began to ask him, saying, Sir, we wish to see Jesus. Philip came and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip came and told Jesus. And Jesus answered them, saying, The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Now, if you know anything about how wheat grows, that's exactly what happens. It has to fall off, it has to die in order to produce more. But he was obviously speaking of himself. He who loves his life loses it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it to life eternal. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there my servant will also be. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Verse 27, Jesus foretells of his death. Now my soul has become troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this purpose I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came out of heaven. I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. So the crowd of people who stood by and heard it were saying that it was thundered. Others were saying, an angel spoke to him. And Jesus answered and said, This voice has not come for my sake, but for your sakes. Verse 31, Now judgment is upon this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. And I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself. But he was saying this to indicate the kind of death by which he was to die. And the crowd then answered him, We have heard out of the law that the Christ is to remain forever. And how can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man? So Jesus said to them, For a little while longer the light is among you. Walk while you have light, so that darkness will not overtake you. He who walks in darkness does not know where he goes. While you have the light, capital L, believe in the light, capital L, so that you may become sons of light, capital L. These things Jesus spoke. He went away and hid himself from them. Verse 37. But though he had performed many signs before them, yet they were not believing in him. This was to fulfill the word of Isaiah the prophet, which he spoke. And you can look at that at Isaiah 53. Lord, who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For this reason they could not believe, for Isaiah again said, He has blinded their eyes, and he hardened their heart, so that they would not see with their eyes and perceive with their heart, and be converted, and I heal them. That's from Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. Now we're up to verse 41. These things Isaiah said because he saw his glory and he spoke of him. Nevertheless, many, even of the rulers, believed in him, but because of the Pharisees, they were not confessing him for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue. Yeah. They feared men more than they feared God. Do you see that there? They feared men. They feared their reputation. They feared, being put out of the synagogue and their status. They probably feared losing their status among the people instead of following God. Verse 43. For they love the approval of men rather than the approval of God. There you go. People pleasers. They'd rather have people praise them than God. Verse 44. And Jesus cried out and said, He who believes in me does not believe in me, but him who sent me. He who sees me sees the one who sent me. I have come as light into the world so that everyone who believes in me will not remain in darkness. If anyone hears my sayings and does not keep them, I do not judge him, for I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. He who rejects me and does not receive my sayings has one who judges him. The word I spoke is what will judge him in that day, the last day. Yeah, your conscience will judge you because you're going to remember all those times somebody told you about Jesus and all those times you sat in church and didn't pay attention, or God was knocking on your heart and you wouldn't let him in. That's what's going to judge you. He's just going to, your conscience is going to judge you yourself. Verse 49. For I did not speak on my own initiative, but the Father himself who has sent me has given me a commandment as to what to say and what to speak. I know that his commandment is eternal life. Therefore, the things I speak just as the Father has told me. Wow. And I'm going to stop right there because we're getting into the Last Supper, and I want to spend some time on that next time around. But there's a lot of food for thought here. In verse 12, in chapter 12, verse 47 and 48. You can also find, I believe, that Luke 10, verse 16. A man's own conscience will condemn him. Words Christ spoke will be remembered. And they'll condemn you because you didn't say, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, I believe. I believe. I mean, we have this beautiful word of God, this beautiful word written down with everything that we need to know in life. And a lot of people just walk all over it. They don't care. They want to dismiss it. My husband has a great saying, and he always says, a guilty conscience has no accuser, which is true. Your own conscience will accuse you. The words of Christ, messages of mercy, everything that a sinner rejects will be remembered. It'll be remembered on the judgment day when Christ returns. And you're gonna pray and you're gonna wish and you're gonna say, Father, Father, and he's gonna say, depart from me. How many times did I come to you and I tried to speak to you and I tried to reach into your heart and you just closed me out, you closed me off. Jesus isn't like people, he's God. And these are just some things that you might want to think about and pray on. If you have lost loved ones and you want to pray for them, pray for them. Pray that the Lord break through to the heart, and the eyes can see who he really is. That he's God, and that he's the only way. He's the only light, the only one that we can get to heaven through. He's the only mediator. next time we'll start with John chapter 13, the Last Supper. Have a great day. Have a blessed day. And thank you for watching. Have a good day.